So, you want to be a dungeon master.
So you want to be a dungeon master.
So you want to be a dungeon.
So you want to be a dungeon master.
So, you want to be a dungeon master.
That's great. We're here to help. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Justin. This week, we're going over the thing that can shape your entire game. Themes are a surefire way to make your setting and your story stand out. This is like a lens that you can see everything through, or the flavor that you add to the pot. These are going to be the big keywords you use to describe what makes this game, this world, these characters, and this story different. It'll make more sense when we get started, I promise. But first...
But first...
It's going to be the first?
So, this week we're going to get a little into... usually we do like some kind of fun, like, hey, what would you do with like a certain vibe or what have you? Since the whole episode's about vibes, let's go into the rules a little bit. So, There was a TikTok video that came across my feed a couple of days ago that you said you had some strong feelings about. So I'd like to kind of explore a little bit. So I'll set the scene. A player has Charm Person cast on them by a bad guy. They then cast Charm Person on themselves, and technically, according to the rules, that should wipe out the initial charm spell. Just going by the rules as written in the book, right? If you're combining a magical effect, the effects of the two spells, if one is stronger than the other, the stronger spell takes effect of similar charm effects, or like charm versus dominate person. Mm-hmm. Dominate would take over as opposed to charm person. But it also says if you are casting two spells of the same strength, the most recent one overwrites the original.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, they're using Charm Person on themselves to get out of a Charm Person cast by another spellcaster.
Correct.
What do you think about that?
I think it's metagaming. I think it's stupid because the important part of this is that they failed the saving throw. They are charmed.
Right.
So now when it's their turn, in the state of being charmed, so hey, I hate to bring it up, but that's not what your fucking character would do. They're charmed. They wouldn't charm themselves, because how does that help your new buddy?
Right.
Like, yes, you still have free will. It's just Charm Person. No one's forcing you to attack your teammates. No one's forcing you to walk off a ledge. But also, at what point are they being like, hey, I just charmed you. You're charmed by me. I'm charming. Mm-hmm. You have a condition on you now because you failed a saving throw, so I deserve this as part of the mechanics of the game. You want to talk rules as written.
Right.
Then you are charmed. At what point is under your charmedness are you like, man, I really, what would help my friend? If I liked myself more. So I will charm myself. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And I'll use this as an example. Dimension 20, Fantasy High, junior year, Gorgug Thistlespring. He gets not only charmed, but also frightened by two different monsters. In his charmed state, he looks at the person who is charming him and says, I'll do whatever you ask. It was dominated, but same principle,
right.
Still a charm effect.
Yeah. Still charm
Looked at the person who was charming them and said, I'll do whatever you want. I'll attack these people. Should I rage? Should I go into a rage? And the dungeon master, as this character, this NPC, said, yes, you should rage. Rage for me and fight these foes. And as soon as Gorgug Thistlespring goes into a rage, the charm drops because of mindless rage, barbarian ability.
Yeah.
But that was done the correct way. Even though, is Zach technically metagaming even a little bit? Of course, there's a level to it. But that's not the point. Is in character, it made total sense for him to rage.
Exactly. Yeah. It made total sense because it was like, oh, I've dominated you. Now hurt your friends. Do as much damage to your friends as you can. As a barbarian,
and so
doing as much damage as you can, rage is part of that.
Right.
So
Charming
it makes
yourself.
sense for him to...
Yeah.
Right.
Because, like,
that
it all... There's so many layers to this, is why I feel so strongly about this. Because let's flip it around now. Okay, the monsters can do this. Hey, players, never cast a charm spell, or I'm just going to undo it by them casting it to themselves. oh, I cast a really what's geish. He was getting ripped
It's a
apart in
charm.
the comments because of the fucking
Yeah.
pronunciation, which I don't blame him for. No, that's no one's fault. That's a weird one.
It
But
is.
like, no, I meant like what level is geish? It's like a 5th level spell, isn't it? It's
fifth
like pretty
level
high
spell,
level.
yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
you're a PC, and you cast geish on somebody. This clever spell that requires a little bit of know-how and like creative thinking, you know. And I just go, okay, I hear you. You've geished me. I geished myself, and now I'm ungeished.
Yep.
Sorry. Like, what is the point of all these spells? So, like, is it rules
Yeah.
is written that if they were to cast it on themselves, it would work this way? Yes. Is it fun? No. And also,
No.
yeah, let's examine if it's fun. No, it's not. And let's also
Nope.
see if it really is rules is written. It kind of isn't, because you only got there
Right.
by bending. Your interpretation of what it means to be charmed is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Then again, if you
Yeah.
and everybody at your table is playing this way and you all are down for it, whatever. I won't. I'm not interested in that as a rule, but okay. You know, if you're
Yeah.
all having fun, you know, have at it.
But
gang,
yeah, I mean,
lads.
play it how you want to play it. But
No.
yeah, no, I honestly was going to play devil's advocate, but I can't. I really can't. It's really, because you're right. You're so right. Like, it is
Yeah.
just metagaming on a level that makes the whole game not fun.
Exactly.
And yeah, it got some pretty heated. I mean, I don't know, got some traction on TikTok. Wound up on my For You page. Thought it was an interesting scenario to talk about, at least.
For sure. Yeah. It's there's always going to be those D&D thought experiments because the rules are both very specific and also ambiguous at times, that it leaves a lot of room for discussion. But
yeah, so that's, I don't know. That's the thing.
There you go.
Let's talk about some themes.
Let's talk about some
Vibes,
themes,
if you will.
Hey gang, we wanted to talk to you about something pretty important real quick. See, we have some really cool ideas for the future, but we need your help. You can do that by supporting us through our Patreon. At the lowest tier, you get early access to podcast episodes, access to episodes of Action Surge, our post-session table talk show, and entry into a private channel on our Discord server. At the next tier, you can get access to Bonus Action, our bonus content podcast where we talk about a huge variety of D&D and TTRPG related things, like Multi-Class Mystery Mashup, where we get 2 random classes and have to build a character, or Monster Matchmaker, where we go over our favorite monsters at each CR level, or recaps of our home campaign, plus so much more. Joining the Patreon helps us continue to grow and put out content that gets better and better as we learn, improve, and try new things. So, check out the link in the description to join the gang today.
Let's talk about some themes, some vibes. I use this as I don't know what to call it, like a writing tool so much. This idea of themes, of categories, if you will. Like there's so much. It was hard to come up with like what the word was that I was thinking of in my head of like, is this like the tone? Is this the vibe, the theme? You know, like, and it kind of is like all of those things and kind of just mushed together into some sort of quasi definition, literary device, whatever. So it's just the feeling that you get. These are sort of, there's so many examples you can give, but
Yeah,
I'm thinking of like setting expectations. Tropes, yes. Tropes play into it. So like, we'll start with like setting expectations. One of the reasons that you as a dungeon master would use themes is that there are certain expectations that come along with that can aid you, both in like what your players can expect. It just kind of helps you set those expectations of what the game is going to be like and the story elements. And it helps you with like world building and writing because you have like so many different things to lean on, you know, tropes, for example.
Tropes.
Motifs. And I think those guidelines are super freaking helpful. I use them all the time.
Yeah, because it kind of helps both limit your scope of everything because you're not trying to do everything, obviously, but it also gives you a writing point of like, hey, in this crazy steampunk setting, you know, maybe we can do like a sweet ass airship battle or something like that.
Mhm.
You know, it's good on both ends of this. Good for both ends of the spectrum, I guess I should say, in that you're not trying to jam pack, you know, crazy medieval. I don't even know where I was going with that thought, but
I know what you mean though, because when you're world building, sometimes the infiniteness of it can get really daunting. Where you're like, Jesus, man,
Yes.
anything can freaking happen,
that's what I'm
dude.
saying.
And so
Right.
having those guidelines, even though it can feel like a restriction or like a limitation, it can actually let you go wild. We've used this analogy before of the bowling alley when those bumpers are up, baby, I'm whipping that ball down. You know what I mean? But if they're not up, I might be afraid that it's going to hop lanes. And so, having those guidelines can be really helpful. But yeah, I mean, there's a ton of things like going back to the steampunk idea or like theme. Yes, air battles, airships, technology, mad scientist, Frankenstein. I'm thinking of a million different things, right? Like alchemy, electricity is big in power and electricity. How does that play into things? And so it's just like spider effects because I always write with like spider web ideas, how they web out. And so like if steampunk is the main theme, there's just so much you can run off of that because there's so many different interpretations of what steampunk is that's already out in media. So there's so much inspiration to draw from. It's incredible. And then another very well-known tip that we've talked about a million times, not only can you use those tropes. You can't tropes. Not only can you use them to lean into, but you can also subvert them and go against them and be like, okay, how do I put a high fantasy medieval thing in the middle of a steampunk thing and have it make somewhat sense, or at least in a way that's like funny at the very least, you know? What is that one thing? It's like, oh man, a kid from Brooklyn's day in King Arthur's court or something, some shit like that.
A kid in King Arthur's court?
Yeah, something.
Where he makes like the roller skates or the roller blades and all the other crazy shit. Yeah.
That kind of idea, but it's like instead of King Arthur's cart, it's like King Arthur in a steampunk world in Nikola Tesla's court or something. So many fun ideas.
Yeah.
I've done it with almost every actual play we've done.
Jump to modern would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just such a fun place to start with like that sort of overarching flavor. Like, and I also have gotten into the point of like combining themes. Are you just taking two different themes and being like, what do they look like together? Like, okay, here's a theme of like vampire gothic horror. But then what if I combine that with like action heist? You know?
Sounds like a fun game.
Or something else. Or you can mix it with a million other things too. Like vampire gothic horror with this steampunk idea. Or mix it with, I don't know, 80s slasher. There's a million different directions you can go to. There's so many themes. There's so many ideas that you can just like take these two different concepts and combine them into one thing and be like, what would that look like? And then you just start building from there, and then it influences a lot of your decisions, like when you're coming up with names for locations, or like, what do the locations look like? Okay, well, it's in a vampire world, like gothic horror, that like sort of typical Transylvania Dracula shit. But we're also talking action. We're talking heist. We're talking intense stuff like that. So maybe Dracula's castle is the final thing that you have to break into and steal something. Maybe you're stealing his coffin. Maybe you're a part of this like descendant line from Van Helsing, where now you guys are like super soldiers, like kind of playing into Underworld a little bit. How it was like a futuristic, it was still sort of modern, but they had like pretty intense technology. That idea of like Van Helsing's descendants are like super soldiers, SEAL Team 6 vampire hunters, and they got to go in and break into this job. I don't know. It helps with everything. If you're doing a Western, we're just going to keep using steampunk. If you're doing a Western steampunk, then like maybe some of those things don't fit that I just said before, the Dracula thing, this and that, you know, those things don't fit as well. But in a Western steampunk, now you get the giant spider going.
The Wild Wild West spider.
Hell yes, you do. Tell me I'm wrong, dude. That's steampunk and Western.
You're not. That's steampunk as hell.
Because some genius had the thought of what if those two things combined, and they were right. And history will show that they were right. And history will show that they were on the right side.
Man, now that song's stuck in my head. Awesome.
The Man in Black. That one?
No, the Wild Wild West one.
Weird.
Weird, I know. Funny.
Also a Will Smith song. But
also a Will Smith
So
song.
let's go over some examples of what we mean using different media as like specific IPs as examples.
Okay.
So like I'll go first with the first one. Feel free to come up with any. I know we have an outline here with some ideas on there, but feel free to rip and roar. The first one I'll say is like The Shining. Has a very specific theme and vibe to it. You know what I mean? Like you could do, and it depends on how specific you want to get. This comes down to a little bit of like media literacy and like how well people understand things like this, like tropes, and how, you know, not even well read, because it doesn't need to only be books, but you know what I mean? Like,
right.
Yeah. But so knowing those things can be really, really helpful. But for The Shining, broadly speaking, you can just say, yeah, it's horror. It's, that makes sense. But also, there's so much more to it. It has that really creepy, mental. There's like psychic stuff going on.
Psychological
That's what
kind of torment going on.
Yeah, this playing with the idea of the mundanity of it all, of like doing the same thing day in and day out. Not to mention there is like some supernatural elements to it. This having the whole location kind of, even though it's a gigantic hotel, still like stuck in one location. Not to mention like it's hard not to think of the retro patterns, like just a different era when that movie was made, and not to mention when the book was written and stuff. So it's like thinking of the really specific rug patterns and the colors and stuff, and like even the hairdos and like the outfits and stuff. It brings to mind, for me at least, like really specific like time period. And so The Shining brings all those things together. Like if I were going to tell a D&D story that had Shining vibes, like if that was how we advertised it as So You Want to Be a DM, like, oh, our next actual play kind of has like some vibes kind of like The Shining. If I'm a viewer, an audience member, and I hear that, I'm expecting a couple things, you know, without knowing anything about the actual play. If the people making it said it has Shining vibes, I'm thinking, well, it's got to be horror,
creepy hotel,
yeah, either a hotel, or I would welcome the idea of like another sort of locked position. It doesn't need to be a hotel, but if it's some kind of, you can't be running around flying on planes and doing a million different travel things, you know?
Yeah, no.
If you're in a cabin in the woods, I would accept it. You know, there's certain things I would accept, as opposed to just like a normal, like a hotel. But
there's something about,
and I like
the different, like the floor. Like I love the retro vibe of it.
I think that's important.
There's something about the kind of what you were saying about the mundanity of like all these floors. There's a bunch of rooms. It all looks the same. You go through this place and it's almost like this weird liminal space.
Yeah,
that they get into a little bit. Yeah. That I would kind of expect to see in this too.
Yeah, definitely some psychological horror, some like weird, unexplained things, just like creepy stuff happening that doesn't really have an explanation.
Yeah.
A lot of like random perception checks and just being like, oh, okay, what did you get? A 12? All right, don't worry about it.
This would be a fun game to use madness rules too.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because it's something that I feel like we haven't really talked about too much. That has like a whole like 3 or 4 pages in the DMG about it, about using madness, and it hardly ever gets used. Yeah, because number one, it's confusing as hell.
It can be, yeah, and it's also like some of it can feel, if you're not like prepared to think a little bit deeply about it. Sometimes I think it can look very intense, because like there's different varying levels of madness. There's like temporary quick things where it's like it's going to last an hour. So the worst case scenario, even if it's disadvantage on everything, it's an hour. Their characters will be fine. You know, like it's not that big of a deal. But then there's like permanent madness, or like minor and major madness, where it's like you're different. You're a different person now. Your character's
You have
ruined.
been-
You need the wish
Yeah.
spell. Like you're fucked.
Yeah.
But it is
yeah,
it
I
is a
think
good
that would be
mechanic.
a fun mechanic. We should do that in a game sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that would be really, really fun. So other than The Shining, can you think of anything else that has a strong theme of vibes?
Theme or vibes? The first thing that kind of came to mind was like it's almost a typical fantasy trope, but like Lord of the Rings also has a very definite vibe of a group going on a quest to somewhere.
Yeah, the hero's journey.
Right.
There's some
But I
big
mean, I think that's a
themes
pretty
there.
that's a pretty broad thing though.
The hero's journey is very broad,
Yeah.
but Lord of the Rings less so. I mean, it's I guess it can be considered broad, but I get a vibe from it for sure.
I mean, because it is its own kind of world. There are interactions that you would expect to see between elves and dwarves and, the populace in general. That typically, or, depending on the table, may or may not show up a bunch. I think that the Lord of the Rings trope, like the vibe settings, is kind of vanilla vanilla D&D almost.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of the other ones that we've already kind of talked about, like Wild Wild West would be a really fun setting of crazy steampunk in a Western setting.
Yeah, even
and also you could do so much with it.
A Western setting on its own already brings so much to the table. But also it is a little limiting though, right? There's so much that it brings, but there's also like it's hard to think of a Western where you're not like where I'm not picturing like orange clay, like just a dust bowl behind you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like that is a big limiter of just like, oh, okay. I can't picture it.
But it could also be a good writing starting off point type of deal for it, that too, of, if you're having trouble figuring out, okay, well, what's going to be around? Well, not a lot of anything. You're going to have dirt, cactus, lizards, dirt.
And lizards. And
lizards. And maybe a cactus or two. No, but it's, but there's also life in that too of, the desert oasis or the town in the middle of freaking nowhere, that the railroad town that's going to be gone in, a year when the railroad moves on.
Yeah.
There's railroads and fun stuff. I love, me, I guess. I don't know. Trains are fun.
Trains are very fun. Horses, cattle. But yeah, there's definitely a ton that it adds to it. And then when you add another layer like steampunk or whatever, whether it's, cowboys versus aliens or cowboys versus vampires or monsters or something, or, steampunk.
Yeah. And if you
adds so
look
much.
at if you look at like some of the literature from that time period, even when they talk about the future, they're talking about steampunk. They're
Pretty
like,
much.
oh man, the world of the future, everybody's going to have their own personal hot air balloon that they fly around in, and that's how they get to work every day. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure.
We're almost there.
I feel like I've seen like a diagram or something of that, of like, hey, in the future, everybody's going to have their own flying machine. They've been talking about having flying machines since the 1800s. Like, no, we're still not there. Still not there.
No, flying
But we've been
cars.
talking about it for 200 years.
So there's a ton of examples out there in media. Marvel movies, like the superhero movies, would be another, like tons of tropes and examples in there.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many tropes and different themes I find in anime. They're like the way that power scaling works in anime is like very textbook. The good guys are really strong and they beat the shit out of these bad guys. Oh, what's this? New bad guy? Whoa, that bad guy beat the shit out of the good guys. Good guy gets stronger. Whoa, he beats the shit out of that bad guy. What's this? New bad guy? And so on and so forth. That's anime.
Yeah.
Shonen. That's specifically those boy shonen ones, and they're crazy and I love them regardless. But there's so many little tiny mini tropes. There's like the character who's like kind of a scumbag but has a heart of gold, and his magic is like a dark magic, but he's actually the sweetest guy ever. You know what I mean? There's so many different things of different characters like that. And so let's get into how we would use this as dungeon masters, planning for D&D things, continuing this idea of providing examples. So what we're going to do is we have a list of themes. We also have a list of general like ideas and concepts that you'll find in D&D games.
Okay.
And we're going to essentially just be like mixing and matching and just kind of like, here's like, for example, one of the D&D concepts / ideas is a wizarding school that exists. That's something that many D&D enthusiasts will have heard of. Lots of dungeon masters are going to have to create one in their game for one reason or another. And so let's do that, but let's put a theme on it. And so then we'll go back to our theme column and, apply these different themes to it. And how does that wizarding school change as we look at different themes? Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, I think.
Amazing.
Well, let's do it.
So we're starting off. Let's start off with wizarding school. Let's go through the themes.
Sure. Okay.
So first up, steampunk. What does a steampunk wizarding school look like? What does it have? How does it stand out?
A lot of clockwork bullshit all over the place.
Yes, lots of clocks, definitely. Maybe even like hallways full of grandfather clocks.
Just
kind of
gears
thing, like,
and stuff like in the walls that you can see of just always turning, grinding kind of deal.
Maybe the whole building moves like a clock.
Yeah.
The whole building is made of gears, and
hell.
it's like so it's shifting. It's always moving. If it's like 2 o'clock,
I feel like we're
the
kind of going to
the auditorium's over
plane,
here.
but yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I think that's really, really fun.
The alchemy is always a big part of the steampunk genre as well.
Alchemy's got to be huge.
It's going to be huge. It's got its own wing.
Yeah. I kind of want there to be like maybe the alchemy professor. Again, alchemy is really big here. That's a lot of students come here for the alchemy department. And that teacher is like, let's say, a version of Dr. Frankenstein. But then also there's a different teacher who teaches a different class who is like Frankenstein, like the monster. Like maybe he's PE or something. Like I think that's really funny.
I like that. Yeah.
Hey guys, what's going on? We're doing dodgeball today. Get up against the wall. Like that's hilarious.
He has 0 dexterity, so he throws 1 dodgeball and then gets pelted by all the students.
Yeah. Hell yeah. That's really funny. Yeah. Okay. See, there we go. We can keep going. Of course, you could do like some of the towers have like Tesla coils on them. And so at certain times of day, depending on
Tesla
the
coils,
connections,
tropes.
So many different things. Maybe they are trying to do something new. I would imagine I would paint this steampunk school as like kind of being on the cutting edge, but in a way that's like maybe there are parts of the kingdom that are like not about it or like scared of like the progress. Like they're like there's a group of people who are like against this wizarding school because like they're advancing science / magic too fast or something.
Right. And I think that's another crucial element of this is the kind of like flavor of the magic in the world. Like, is it purely technological or is it something like they're tapping into some kind of weave of some sort?
Great question. Yeah.
I think, with the Tesla towers and stuff, I feel like electricity, just making it technological would kind of make it a lot more fun of like, okay, cool. I cobbled together this little machine here and now I can cast a fireball. Like, this crazy robot thing that I made now lets me talk to animals.
Yeah. You could make it a point of really, and you could go really in depth with it. But if you were like on the slightly newer side of DMing, or you just like were scared of changing the vibes of the magic system of D&D too much, You could also just make it a point of putting a lot of focus and emphasis into the components of spells. So like for the fireball, the back
Very
guano.
true.
Like maybe that's a course. Maybe that's a whole thing of like gathering equipment. Like you have to go down to the bat caves and get the fucking guano. That's like part of the class, you know? That's really funny. I like this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have to do a wizarding school in a horror 80s vibe or theme.
Okay, so my first thought goes to Friday the 13th of, like a slasher movie.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like the students are, it's kind of like a quote unquote normal wizarding school in that they're just there to learn magic. They all have like these different classes, divination, abjuration, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's doing their classes, but then at night it gets spooky and there's a bad guy about that's kind of slinking around the halls, and maybe there's been a murder or two that have been kind of off campus, kids caught out of bed at night and then they're just wind up dead or something like that.
Dude, can I take a swing at this? Can I pick up your layup and fucking dunk it? Because I have an idea based on what you've said so far. Normal school at night, crazy stuff happens. What if our story follows a group of outcasts or detention kids or something like that, and they're like up late at night? Tropes. And so we're following the bad kids as they're up late at night, past curfew and shit. And that's when like the dangerous stuff starts going down. All this shit. I like that idea a lot. I think so far it sounds so funny and fun to me. So the slasher, this like whole thing is happening at the school. It's happening like on campus.
Right.
Okay.
So the tough part of putting it like a Jason style slasher in the game is that the players, at least my players, would just immediately fling themselves at this big bad and
of course
die, basically.
Of course. Yeah, no, it would be interesting how to balance it.
Right. Because you do want this, like the crazy, like the he's just walking and everybody's sprinting away from him, but somehow he's still gaining ground.
Yeah.
Like,
I think if you are leaning into the
superhuman thing.
Yeah, if you are leaning into like Jason or Michael Myers, that is a very specific villain trope in those movies. That slow walking, unbeatable, unkillable kind of figure. That is challenging for sure. I think if you go into like some of the other 80s horror movies that aren't necessarily like a singular figure, it sets it up better for a D&D game, just in the sense of like there can be minions and like other things that you fight along the way.
Scream
is a really interesting plot.
Yeah, because then that leads a thing where you can kind of like do the whole like have players also playing bad guys too, kind of. And
good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. I know, right? You need a really good table for that.
Done. Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, this was fun. All right. That's our Wizarding School horror in the 80s. Amazing. Next one, Wizarding School heist movie. Ocean's 11 Wizarding School.
I feel like this is just stealing from the headmaster.
Yeah, that's the easy.
Like,
I feel like that's a good one. It's definitely. I am thinking of doing this in a couple of ways. There's the like, what if this is a Wizarding School for thieves, or something like that, or like this is like a Wizarding School for criminals. And so this is like the final project.
Right. Okay.
Do you know what I mean? So like all of the classes are like, here's a class on illusion magic because it's disguising yourself and whatever. Here's a one on abjuration and here's one on evocation, but it's all geared towards being a criminal. And like this like criminal organization is like raising kids who are fucking thieves and whatever, masterminds.
That's crazy. That's a problem in and of itself.
Yeah, you know, it's an epidemic, but we start them young.
Got to get them while they're young.
And now
the Jedi taught me that.
They're breaking into banks and safes all left and right. We can't stop them. And so then it would just be
Damn
like the
kids.
final project, or you could do a couple of like sessions like leading up to it, going to the different classes and having these different like professors who are like hardened criminals who are like absolutely badasses, but also like maybe they're nice on the inside.
Yeah, like Gordon Ramsay, of like seeing Gordon Ramsay interact with an adult and then seeing him interact with a kid. It's like two different people.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I think that's a fun idea.
Okay. Yeah.
So then the next one is, this one's pretty loosey goosey, but the theme is just kind of comedy. I even put the word cartoony down.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is a specific vibe of, this one has a lot to do with tone and a lot of like the sort of feelings and emotions that we're sort of shooting for as the story progresses. Or the emotions that we're shooting for out of the story. Like what we're trying to get out of the story is comedy. And so it's a little different than some of the previous ones.
Yeah, this one's honestly the broadness of it makes it kind of hard. Like,
yeah, that's why I think if we lean into the word cartoony.
Okay, cartoony.
Yeah, so think like almost like Looney Tunes.
Yeah. So imagine now I can't get the thought of Wile E. Coyote in a wizard's hat. And
Hell yes. I love Wile E. Coyote.
Teaching like how to summon an anvil.
Yeah, hell yeah. Conjuration magic.
Yeah.
Amazing. Hell yes. He just has his spell book just says the word Acme on it.
Yep.
Oh my
1000%.
god, dude.
Yeah,
so that's canon. That's part of it. Bugs Bunny he simply must be the head of like the bards somehow, even though this is technically a wizarding school.
No, Bugs Bunny's going to run the joint.
I'm picturing Bugs Bunny in the opera ones where he does a lot of opera.
Yeah.
He does a lot of music stuff. He pretends to be conductors.
Those are good.
He's constantly doing opera stuff. So that's the only reason I said that. But other than that, trust me,
I like
a million percent I would put him in the charge. But you could also put like,
oh man,
God, this is so funny. Like the old lady, Granny. Yeah, you could put her in charge. Sylvester.
You could
be
put
like
her in charge.
Mascot, like just like a pet.
Yeah,
I don't know. But I could have so much fun making a Looney
Still
Tunes
just a cat.
school.
Not the teacher or anything.
That would be a ton of fun. But yeah, I think
So
that's
funny.
that's the part is playing with the physics of it. So
Right.
even though it's cartoony, I mean this has been said before by other people, but like the idea that Looney Tunes still has a logic to it. It still has physics.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that like Wile E. Coyote runs out past the cliff and he's hovering, but he doesn't fall until he looks down. There's like it's a rule. And so it's so much fun. I think playing with that would be so much fun. I would definitely have the most fun choosing really specific magic items. Like the first two that come to mind are the portable hole and the magic paints.
Yeah, love
Two genius, and like a bag of tricks, like those fuzzy little balls that turn into animals. So many fun like magic items that you could really lean into. Not to mention, this could be a really fun way to doing like a really just lighthearted campaign, like just one that kind of recharges your battery as opposed to like really dramatic NPCs are dying left and right. You're like saving the world. This one's just like a silly little goof.
Protect the world from Marvin Martian.
Hell yeah. Okay. And then next is intense.
Elmer Fudd are here to.
Elmer Fudd. Oh my gosh. And then next up is an intense drama. So this would be like the inverse of that, I feel. So it would just be a matter of, it doesn't, I think this comes down to like, if I was intentionally trying to go out of my way to do a wizarding school in a setting that is intense drama, I think I'm just going to lean into realism a lot more.
Yeah.
I'm going to like put a little bit more time into making sure like the school makes sense, you know? Whereas the cartoony one, it's like, I don't fucking care.
Improperly doing magic like causes harm.
Yeah. This is like a really dangerous thing.
Blowing up in kids' faces and stuff. Like, yeah, I think of the show The Magicians. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
I don't think so. I've
but
heard
it
of
is very much, yeah. It's like wizard school, wizard grad school. Like it's all older kids. or not older kids, they're adults. But they like if they do too much magic, there's a chance that the weave basically like burns them alive from the inside. So they have to be careful how like of their magic usage and all this.
Yeah.
And like if you cast a spell wrong, your freaking face gets put on upside down or some shit, or
Whoa.
like it's crazy. Like there's some of the stuff you're like, it's like, oh, cool magic. Haha. Oh God.
Yeah.
What just happened?
Yeah. Hardcore consequences. Yeah. Stuff like that. Like the idea of that magic is like incredibly powerful. That it has
not to be
huge
used
consequences. Yeah. I would maybe make like, even though, because assuming that the wizarding school is like an important part of the plot or something, like if everybody in the cast is playing some kind of spellcaster, then that would influence how I prioritize which parts of the world to build out. But maybe you could play with the idea of like magic is very rare, so not in the party. The party, they're all spellcasters, but like in the world, it's not common for people to be wizarding about. But
right.
I love that. Okay. So yeah, definitely playing into some realism, having higher consequences, higher stakes, kind of making sure that there is like a strong logic and there's a strong idea of cause and effect is really important in that.
Yeah.
And then for the last one, just like a coming of age idea. This one's really specific because I think it has so much. It's like really challenging, I think, to do an actual play or like a D&D game with this particular theme or setting. So maybe we don't even really do this one. Let me think about this.
Well, so the thing about coming of age though is that it's hard to do it without making one player feel like the main character.
I know, unless you're like so
Unless you do
specifically
it
being
for
like
all of
we're
them.
all teenagers who are becoming that's how you would do it. So at a wizarding school, either A, everybody is joining the school at the same time, or B, they're like graduating the school at the same time. Maybe they're all hitting a certain benchmark. Or you could play with the idea, I mean, just being in a school, depending on your age and stuff, people are going to come of age at different times anyway, right? So you could do it that way. So I think the school concept leans into this theme pretty well.
Yeah.
Just because of the
It
setting.
really does. I think it pretty much writes itself almost.
Yeah.
In a sense of,
for sure.
You know, because you're talking about either graduation or like coming of age could be your first kiss or, you know, your first spell that you ever cast, like the first high level spell that you've ever cast or something like that.
Yeah, getting praise from an authority figure.
Yeah. It could mean a million different things. And I think out of all of them for this concept of the wizarding school, this one would probably be trouble to do at first, but once you got the basic lines down, this thing's on rails. It pretty much writes itself.
Yeah, and it's an easy one to add to the other ones.
Right.
You can add this to steampunk, to horror, to heist. Because I think the important thing to know about coming of age stories is that it's all about maturity, like maturing to a certain point. It's hitting some sort of personal threshold for a young person, like 99 out of 100 times, you know? But yeah, so I think as long as you're hitting those things, as long as you talk to each player and kind of discuss what type of growth do you want to see from your character? You know, what does that look like? Maybe it's understanding that you don't need your parents' approval for every single thing. Maybe it's, you know, realizing that taking care of your little brother isn't a chore. It's actually a cool thing to do or whatever. I don't know, you know, all at wizarding school. Okay. So then let's try it. Now we're going to go back through those same themes, steampunk, horror, all those things. But this time we're going to look at them through a different concept. I think we can get through two more of these. I'll let you actually pick the next one. So there's a little list here. Feel free to pick whatever one, and we're gonna go through these themes and see what's up.
I honestly, I like the next one, lycanthropy. That's a very interesting niche little thing. Like, because there's a bunch of different types of were creatures in D&D lore.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's like were bears and were ducks and were
were sharks, were otters,
platypi or whatever.
all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff. Yeah, especially
Yeah.
if you get into the third-party materials, then it opens it up to any kind of animal you can freaking think of. So yeah,
Right.
that it's a
So,
curse. It's just like it's werewolves. I mean, it's everything you know about werewolves applied to other animals. Is lycanthropy. It's a curse.
Right, pretty much.
Normally, you can't control it when you shift, but also over time, you can learn how to control the transformation. Has to do with connections to the moon most of the times, depending on the world setting. But that's the gist. And so, if we're looking at lycanthropy in a steampunk setting, steampunk vibes, what is the connection there?
So, I'm imagining dark, dirty alleyways running through the city of whatever it is. The steampunky vibes of the kind of, Victorian era style, like clothes
Jack
and
the
stuff
Ripper.
like that. Jack the Ripper time.
Victorian
Yeah.
London,
So it's always fucking foggy for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Almost always nighttime. I would almost put this in a setting where the moon is almost always out.
Okay.
Because it is technically like only the full moon or whatever. But like I like the thought of perpetual night.
Yeah.
And with the steampunk vibes and stuff, maybe you've got these cool little gadgets and gizmos that either help you transform or help you maintain control or something like that. You've got these weird gadgets and gizmos that you got to go get, or build or what have you. There's the one mad scientist guy in the back. There's the one creepy door down this alleyway. It's got one little lantern out front of it. You go inside. It's this mad scientist who's been coming up with ways to either try to find a cure for your lycanthropy or kind of could be like a Q type character of like, here, have some gadgets.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's some kind of I think there's something there.
They definitely work together pretty well. And it's hard not to think of the Hugh Jackman movie of Van Helsing, because that has to do with lycanthropy, and there's definitely steampunk vibes. But I'm also thinking of the plot to the video game Bloody Roar. This is so specific. It was a video game. It was a fighting video game where you would build up your meter, and when it builds all the way up, you could beast out. And that's my words, not their words.
Right.
But you would beast out, and you would turn into this animal-human hybrid, essentially a lycanthrope, right? And so, like, one character would turn into, like, a wolf guy. One person would be a lion guy. There was, like, a gorilla, a leopard, like, all different animals. And some of them were, like, animals you wouldn't really think of. Like, there was a girl named Alice who turned into a bunny, like a white rabbit. But she, like, the character of Alice was also a soccer player. So she had a move where she would, like, crush the person into a ball and then, like, juggle them, like, soccer style, and then just kick them out of the ring. It was insane. It was such a fun game. So creative. I liked animals as a kid, so it was, like, even better. Fighting games were fun. So it was just, like, the fucking best. But in that game, the lore was that, like, people were being experimented on by this company, and they were being turned into these, I think they called them in the game, like, zoanthropes or something. Obviously, the idea of, like, zoology. But I think that's a really interesting idea. The idea that, like, there's some kind of evil organization out there that's turning people into these lycanthropes. And so there's different types of lycanthropes all over the area, different animals. And maybe, maybe, our main characters are escaped experimentees. But, and this is like a really random idea I just thought of, with keeping it in the steampunk vibe, because everything I've said thus far, I mean, with the steampunk comes with the idea of experiments, but other than that, everything doesn't need to be steampunk. But here's a steampunk idea. Our heroes have been given, like, chimera blood, and so they have, like, multiple lycanthrope forms. As opposed to only being werewolf, you're like werewolf and werebear, and you can pick between the two whenever you need one over the other.
Interesting.
Kind of idea. Of course, there would be a lot of balancing involved with this kind of idea. We're homebrewing a ton of ideas, but, like,
Mm-hmm.
I think that could be really interesting. The idea that you would be able to turn into different animals based on like, maybe you have to get like a sample of them, and that's like the alchemy part of things. And so like, oh, we need to run away into the river. Oh, don't worry. We all have like some samples of like salmon or something like that so we can swim fast. And so they turn into salmon. I don't know. Sick.
Starting to sound like Animorphs almost.
Right? Okay. Lycanthropy with a heist movie. Right. Whoa.
With a heist movie. That's a tough one.
I'm thinking of a bunch of different ideas. The first idea is that everybody is a lycanthrope, like all the PCs. And you guys are stealing either, like, I mean, there could be a number of things, right? Maybe you're stealing a cure.
Yeah, that's kind of where my brain went first.
You have to use your powers to steal the cure.
And in the process, find out that it's not such a bad thing.
Or a fellow lycanthrope. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I think that would be really cool.
Ocean's 12 type of deal.
Yeah, and then like
Ocean's 11 is going to get the cure, and then at the end it gets shattered. Oh no. And then you're like, well, it's not so bad. And then next arc, one of my
Silver
lycanthrope
lockdown
buddies has been,
in a fortress made of silver. How will you get in?
Yeah.
Amazing. Solved it.
And I like the idea of using the different lycanthrope kind of abilities in that. And I like the idea of having different types of lichens, even though I feel like lichen is specifically wolves.
Yeah, for sure. D&D has taken the term to just mean curse. Yeah.
Where something curse. I like the idea of it being a bunch of different animals there too, because then you kind of have those different slots that you can fill of like the grease man, the face, the brawler. Like you can each have different types.
Yep. Absolutely.
That would fit different roles, and I like that.
Hell yeah. Now the next one is interesting. Lycanthropy mixed with the idea of cartoony stuff. Man. Looney Tunes. I mean, so much of cartoony is a vibe, man. And it's like lycanthrope. It's hard not to just think of a more cartoony version of a werewolf. Oh no, the moon's coming up. Ooh, watch out, everybody. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like a vibe. It's how you portray the transformation and the curse in general.
I'm transforming.
Yeah.
I gotta go get hamburgers, and you just eat a bunch of hamburgers.
I know. Yeah, this
just
one's interesting.
Stupid something. I feel like it's just a group of Wile E. Coyotes at that point, and
I know. Maybe you have to battle Acme.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Using their own tech.
You have to battle against Acme. The road to Acme. Wow.
Yeah, I like that.
It's called.
It really is just a bunch of werewolves in a cartoon vibe.
It's called The Road to Run, a Coyote story. Wow. Okay, we've done it. Moving on.
Final boss is the Roadrunner. He's actually the president of Acme.
Yeah. But that's the point, is that it's silly. We're going with silly ideas. It's just goofy and jokey. Whereas the next category, intense drama, now I'm thinking of a million different IP things also. But in here, we're talking about like those physical transformations that happen in a lot of movies when somebody goes through the werewolf transformation. They're intense. They're brutal. They're gory. They're visceral. And I think that would be a must. You need to describe how painful, how intense, how grotesque the transformations are. Bones are cracking. Skin is ripping. You know?
Yeah. I also like the trope of blacking out during your transformation, whereas in a lot of other...
Unfortunately, we do.
A lot of the other stuff that we've been talking about is kind of talking about retaining control as a werewolf. I think this one
is about losing control.
You wolf out, you don't.
Yeah, it's coming to terms with what you did in your blackout.
Right.
Oh boy.
Exactly.
It's a whole commentary. Oh man. And then coming of age. You know, you're just a pack of friends who all contracted lycanthropy at the same time. And now you got to get ready for prom. Oh, boy.
Oh, man.
I got to shave my face and my back, and I'm only 15. I'm a werewolf teen. That's fucking awesome already, actually.
Yeah.
That's so fun. The idea of just normal ass teenagers dealing with normal ass teenager things, but also they're werewolves.
But also, yeah.
You're like, I gotta get a job. Oh my God, I can't get a job. I have fleas. Just like so fucking fun. I love this. Okay, let's do one more. We'll run through them more quickly this time.
Sure.
People at home, feel free to throw us your themes, throw us your D&D concepts. Maybe we'll do this again in the future. I'm going to go with bards. So this is like a class in D&D, performance-based magician. Normally it's music or, dance or something, but it can be any kind of performance. So all different kinds of bards. We're starting with steampunk. All I'm going to say is, because I've already played a bard who did this, I had a lightning elemental or like a strange backpack that generated electricity, and a bunch of wires and cables came around my backpack and plugged into my lute, and boom, now I have an electric lute. And I just fucking rocked out. I was playing a character named Sue Cash, and I talk like this. All right, mate? And we're here to have a good time, isn't it? And that was how I played. Everything is absolutely brills.
Love that.
So
I absolutely
fun.
love that. I don't know why, but my brain immediately went to the hurdy-gurdy
Of course. As
an instrument.
Yeah.
Because it's got a crank on it. It's like one of the only instruments that's got like a crank on it.
Yeah. No, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
But yeah, I mean, as far as like steampunk vibes, it really would come down to kind of the player and the magic flavor. Because you could do just about anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you literally could do anything with a party of bards, of all bards. There's literally no skill check that will not get passed.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Pretty gnarly. Bards are the greatest. I love them so much. So yeah, a ton of steampunk bard ideas. Getting into the horror or the 80s slasher sort of vibes. Because horror is very broad, so we kind of narrowed it down to the 80s vibes. Man, it's hard because this can go in so many directions. I'm having a hard time pinpointing exactly what I would want to do with this. There's a part of me of just like a kid. There's like a whole genre of kids who are like almost nerdy into horrors, like horror movies and stuff.
Yeah.
And so part of me wants to play with that idea.
It's like too real.
Well, I want them to just play the theremin. Like they are as a bard, they like score horror music. So they would be playing a lot of like the Michael Myers theme, of like playing a lot of those kind of like traditional. This is the bard that would like in a tense moment would start playing the theme song to Jaws. Like that kind of idea I think is really funny. Like, you know what I mean? Like how much of horror movies is added by the music. And this would be the bard to play into that. I think that would be a really funny idea to do. As well as maybe a bard who I just recently watched an anime, and there was a character whose trope was like physically very frightening and very like off-putting, but was actually like an absolute sweetie, but just had the face like intentionally. It was an anime, so it's animated. Their face was just all paper white with like black circles around their eyes and their mouth, like just this stereotypical goth look. But then they were like so sweet and friendly, but they're also, because they look so frightening, they're used to that. They whisper when they speak. So just from a distance, this character would just be like, wow, that's my best friend right there. I really hope they notice me. And it was so funny. Without the subtitles, you couldn't even hear them. And so that's another idea, is like somebody who people think is like the creep, the weirdo, the outcast, but is also just like so sweet. That's a funny idea.
Yeah.
Not to mention maybe playing a bard who like just that heavy death metal shit, and just getting into being like, I don't care if people think I'm the villain. I'm used to that. You know what I mean? Like emo kind of the song
I'll
lyrics.
Be your bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of idea would be really funny. Okay. Amazing. Bard's heist movie.
Oh man, I feel like the easiest one for the bards. Just because they're already set up for the jack of all trades situation. So you've got that very true, to say it for the third time, Ocean's 11 vibe of having a group of people that have their own kind of niche, but then also work together as a group and can do like, because like there's the two guys in Ocean's 11 that are like the tech guys, but they also have a little bit of the, con artist vibes of like with they can talk their way into a situation as well as hack into this computer and figure out how to uplink whatever the hell,
Yeah, for
like
sure.
there's a lot of that, and I think that would be a lot of fun.
No doubt.
I think bards and heists go together like peanut butter and jelly, honestly.
Yeah, it definitely is. Any charisma based class is going to do really well here. I think, especially because bards are skill hounds and they have things like jack of all trades and magical secrets, so they can become so versatile. But I'm trying to think of
fun premise,
the
would be like
performance thing of like, what does their magic look like? Yeah, how are they casting their magic? Now, obviously, you could play into like somebody being a performer. Like it's easy to think of the.
I want them to be in like a band together or something. Like they're in a band. And the way that they pull off their heists is they go get into these venues, like get backstage access and stuff to these venues because they're the band, but then also they're world-class thieves.
What if the Beatles stole the Queen's jewels? That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
Dude, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm freaking in, and I'm Ringo. Moving on. Well, no, listen, here's the deal, mate. I have to be Ringo. It's my favorite. He's my favorite of the Beatles. What do you mean, Paul McCartney of the Beatles? We can have so much fun. Holy shit. Okay, cartoony bards. We mentioned one yesterday off mic, or maybe it wasn't yesterday. I think it was a while ago. But balloon artist bard.
Yeah.
Must go here, hilarious. Or even you can broaden it too, because we need to get into the actual, like, if we're building it out, can we think of 3, a 3rd level, a 6th level, and a 14th level? I want to say, or no, 10th. No, 10th is not. No, it's 14th. It goes 6th to 14th. Bards are so weird. Can we think of 3 abilities that are all balloon based and still fun, or do we broaden it to clown, like just birthday clown?
Right.
Also could be really interesting.
Which birthday clown bard is a very funny idea.
I know. It's really funny. Birthday clown bard with a specialization in balloon animals is so funny. But yeah, no, a hilarious idea. That's a really good one. You could also do like the illustrator, and maybe a lot of their stuff is creating things like kind of taking the magic paints and making the whole subclass into that.
Right.
I mean, obviously they have College of Creation, but still this would be like a very similar idea. Or maybe it's just the flavor of how you play College of Creation. Instead of creating an amount of music visually, you're drawing the cartoons. They're coming to life. A little bit
my
of
brain immediately went to Sai from Naruto.
Yes,
Drawing out the tigers and the crows and stuff on the sheet of paper, and then they jump up and start attacking shit.
Yeah, hell yeah. Absolutely. A little chalk zone action. That's a ton of fun. And then Bard's intense drama. I think
this one's tough.
The first thing I think of is what bards are actually about, like in real history as well as D&D. And that's spreading news through stories often, right? It's also spreading traditions and tales and history, both from a fictional standpoint and from even like religious and all kinds of stuff, right? But that's what bards are for. They're spreading information. And so when I think of intense drama geared around bards, because that has to be like kind of the thing we're focusing on, I'm thinking of shutting that down, how sad and intense that is, and what that would mean. The idea of being like, you're not allowed to spread information, no music, no dancing, no joy, and just this authoritarian 1984 Orwellian shit. And then like, again, going back to kind of the heist movie a little bit, and then here comes the battle of the bands, the rock band who's like, actually, we never stopped rocking. And they just perform a fucking concert that melts the faces off the man, off the authority. That's one idea at least.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's almost is tough. I don't really know how I would do this other than, kind of piggybacking on your idea of like the Footloose vibe of like, oh, this town has got, you can't sing or dance or anything like that here. And, trying to break down the man, get the people on your side.
Yeah, could be something.
A lot of interpersonal relationships to be delved into between players and NPCs and stuff.
Yeah.
I think I would get more into that kind of a nitty gritty type of deal.
It could be really interesting depending on how intense you want to do it. Because then it starts to almost freak me out. It makes me almost sad because it's like, man, we're seeing it happen in real time a little bit.
I know, right?
Destruction of like freedom of press and stuff. So it's sad.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't get more intense or dramatic than that. Fuck. Coming of age. This one, I love the idea. It's hard not to think of the first thought seems like kind of the obvious one, but I also think it's one of the best. And that's just like a group of kids like starting a band, like friends, like young, you know what I mean? Like that typical idea of like high school band being like in your garage kind of thing. And I think that's a really cute idea.
Yeah. My brain went to Bard College.
Oh, another really cool
same
one.
Kind
that's
of
another
a deal.
Really cool one. Yeah.
Of, maybe everybody like, everybody shares a class or something like that, but they've all still got their own different specializations. Graduation's coming up. It's finals week. All that same stuff would still apply, but it'd be in a college setting instead of a high school.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's a great idea. I mean, it's what they call the subclasses after all. So there's a ton to play with there. I like that idea a lot. It's a really good idea for an Oops All Bard campaign too, because you can have, like, I know that they're called like the college of this, the college of that. So you could have people who are playing the different subclasses, like they're parts of the different schools that are all part of the same campus though. I like that a lot. Okay. Well, gang, remember a couple of things. Okay. First of all, this can be really helpful when you're inviting people to your game. It's just a super easy way to immediately set so many expectations about the game without getting into nitty gritty details. So, for example, hey, do you want to play in my comedy horror game? Listen, you already know that there's going to be comedy and there's going to be horror. And that's a ton to go off of immediately. So that if the person is really not into those things or something, then they know. But also remember this. People are going to interpret some of these themes, some of these key words that we use differently. So take that into account, right? Because you might know that horror at an actual play a tabletop role-playing game is inherently different than like watching a horror movie or playing a horror video game. It is different, but for some people, it can still feel just as scary. And so talking about all those different things, covering safety and consent and stuff, and different like triggers, and talking about the theme that you have in mind at like a session 0 can also be really helpful for you, because as the DM, you're just going to get more ideas. You just have more ammunition now. When you hear from your players and you go, oh, that is an interesting idea. You're right. I totally forgot that steampunk could encapsulate this thing that I forgot about, Submarines.
Yeah.
Submarines. Fuck the airship. We're going under the water, baby. That's way scarier. Right. That's way scarier.
Actually, it really is, though.
It is, man. Being under there in a pressurized can and just waiting for the top to pop, just like an ice cold Fresca. It's so condensed in there, and carbonated.
Justin.
And just,
let's get all right. That's all we can get into this time.
Great.
You can find us on TikTok and Instagram at So You Want to Be a DM, or you can ask us a question at soyouwannabeadm@gmail.com. If you like the episode, don't forget to give us 5 stars and a review wherever you found us, and check out the Patreon, the Twitch, and our merch with the link in the description. Join us next time for more Dungeon Master tips and tricks.
Bye.
See you.
And now I get to shout out the members of our Patreon gang. Nub Muffins, may Paylor's light shine upon you. And then there's Tappy, Molly, and Elijah. Thank you all so much for being members of our Patreon gang. Remember, you can find the link to that in the description of the episode. And also remember this. We love you. Thanks again, and tune in next time for more tips and tricks from So You Wanna Be a DM.